The year is 1202 AD. A windswept, cold cathedral in the heart of France. The church bells toll through the mist of dawn, their iron tongues summoning a village still wet with dew. Men kneel in the square, heads bowed, banners trembling in the cold wind. Among them stands Amaury de Montfort, the youngest son of a minor noble house from northern France. A knight with nothing left to prove except his loyalty to God. The Crusade has been called. Pope Innocent III promises absolution to any man who takes up the cross to free Jerusalem. For Amaury, the words pierce like steel through the heart. To fight for Christ is not war. It is salvation made visible. Inside the small chapel of Montfort, an old priest threads a crimson cross onto a linen surcoat. The needle trembles with every prayer. As the final stitch is drawn, Amaury kneels. The fabric feels heavier than armor. It is not just cloth. It is covenant. With this sign, you are bound to Christ. The priest whispers, break it. And you break the soul itself. Outside, peasants cheer as the knights ride forth. Mothers press hands to hearts. Children wave broken reeds like spears. The road south glows with banners and belief. Amaury looks back once, seeing his mother's figure in the doorway. Small, proud, and terrified. He believes he will not see her again, and he is right. For Amaury and thousands like him, faith is geometry, a perfect shape drawn between sin and redemption. To die beneath the cross is not failure, it is fulfillment. Preachers thunder this from every pulpit, that the blood of the infidel washes the stains of one's own soul. Even a thief can enter heaven if his sword serves God. The air of France hums with sermons. Town after town empties of men and horses. Merchants sell relics of dubious origin. A feather from Gabriel's wing, a nail from the true cross. None of it matters to Amaury. He dreams only of Jerusalem, a city of gold, where angels descend upon the battlefield to crown the righteous. Every night, before sleep, he repeats the words of Pope Urban II, still echoing from the First Crusade, a century before. Deus vult, God wills it. He believes it utterly. But the road to God passes first through Venice. When Amaury arrives, he does not see heaven. He sees commerce. Gondolas crowd the lagoon like black beetles. Palaces glitter with marble looted from Byzantium, years before the war even begins. And above it all, the banner of Saint Mark, a golden lion, ripples over a city that worships both Christ and coin. In the Doge's palace, envoys of the Fourth Crusade gather to finalize the contract. Venice will build the ships, feed the army, and ferry them to the Holy Land. For a price so vast, it would shame a king's treasury. Amaury's commander reads the parchment aloud. Each word feels like a nail driven into the purity of his vow. 85,000 silver marks. No man among them has that kind of wealth. When Amaury asks an older knight how such a debt will be repaid, the man smiles bitterly. Perhaps, he says, faith has a credit line. They meet him soon after. Doge Enrico Dandolo, 95 years old, nearly blind, yet sharp as a blade honed by centuries. Draped in scarlet robes, he addresses the Crusaders from the high balcony of St. Mark's Basilica. You have taken the cross, he proclaims, his voice echoing like surf. We, the Venetians, shall be your oars, your wind, your ships. But God does not sail for free. The crowd erupts in cheers, but Amaury feels only unease. He has seen relics sold, indulgences traded, but this is faith on ledger paper. That night, by torchlight, the knights debate in whispers. Some call Dandolo a saintly patron. others, the devil in a cardinal's robe. Amaury listens and says nothing. He stares at the reflection of the cross on the water, trembling, fractured, and wonders if salvation can be bought by the ounce. As weeks turn to months, ships rise from the docks, galleys vast as cathedrals, their hulls smelling of pitch and salt. But gold flows slower than faith. The Crusaders are deep in debt before a single sail unfurls. Rumor spreads that the Doge has a plan to forgive part of it. For a favor, Amaury writes home to his father. "We sail soon. The Pope blesses us. I believe our purpose is pure." He seals the letter with wax, unaware that before it reaches France, the Pope will learn of the deal Venice offers and recoil in fury. On the eve of departure, Amaury meets an older knight, scarred and silent, one who fought in the Third Crusade under Richard the Lionheart. The man sharpens his sword without looking up. "Amaury, they say we march for Christ. Veteran? We always do, until we march for someone richer." Amaury laughs uneasily. "You mock the vow." "No," the man says, "I mock the men who sell it." Those words linger like smoke. They will haunt Amaury across every mile of sea that follows. At last, the Crusaders assemble on the docks. 60,000 men, 30,000 horses, a forest of masts stretching into the horizon. Priests chant Latin over barrels of grain and stacks of swords. Trumpets blare. Amaury kneels as the bishop blesses the fleet with holy water. It mingles with seawater, indistinguishable, as the oars strike and the ships glide away from the lagoon. Amaury watches Venice recede, towers shrinking into mist, bells tolling over the waves. He feels pride, fear, and something he cannot name. A shadow beneath the cross embroidered on his chest. In the days ahead, he will see cities burn that were never enemies, hear hymns sung over bodies that share his creed, and realize that not every prayer is answered by God. Some are answered by gold. For now, he believes, he must believe, because if this vow fails, everything he has ever known, heaven, honor, salvation, collapses with it, and somewhere behind him, in the counting houses of Venice, quills scratch across parchment, is sealing the fate of tens of thousands of souls. Faith, once written in blood, is now written in ink. The fortified port city of Zara, Adriatic coast, modern Zadar, Croatia, November 1202 AD. The insistent, mournful clang of church bells. The deep, resonant thud of massive siege engines. The fleet of the cross drifts beneath a gray sky, its sails heavy with damp wind. The banners of Christ ripple beside the red and gold flag of Venice. Two symbols, faith and commerce, lashed to the same mast. For weeks, Amaury has heard the whispers. The army is broke. Venice has spent its fortune building the fleet. The Crusaders have not paid their share. The Doge grows impatient. Men murmur that the journey to Jerusalem might never begin. Then, one morning, the order comes. "We sail for Zara." Amaury blinks. "Zara?" he asks. A scribe beside him nods. A city that defied Venice. Rich, fortified, and Christian. Amaury feels something cold slide through his chest. "But it's a city of the faith. So were we," the man says, and walks away. The truth spreads like rot. Unable to pay Venice the 85,000 marks owed, the Crusade agrees to an unholy trade. In exchange for forgiveness of their debt, they will capture Zara, a rival Catholic city along the Adriatic coast. Amaury watches the council debate within the Doge's palace. The old Dandolo stands before them, blind eyes gleaming like polished bone. "You swore an oath," He reminds them to fight the enemies of Christ, and Zara has defied Christ's own merchants. Some laugh nervously, others cross themselves. Amaury sees men of faith nodding to a logic that stinks of sulfur. That night, in the flickering light of the campfires, he hears priests arguing. We cannot fight fellow Christians, but without Venice, we cannot reach Jerusalem. Then perhaps, one whispers, Jerusalem is not where God wants us to go. Amaury grips his sword hilt, torn between duty and conscience. The sound of the waves outside seems to whisper a word he has never feared before. Betrayal, Zara, November 10th, 1202. The fleet arrives like a thunderstorm. 80 galleys line the bay, their prows carved with angels and lions. The walls of Zara glimmer white against the sea. Proud, silent, unaware that the army approaching flies the same cross they kneel before, Amaury's commander raises his sword, for God and for the Crusade. But even as the cry rises, no man shouts Amen. From the city walls, priests raise the host and ring the bells. The sound of faith, begging faith for mercy. Arrows answer. Amaury charges with the others, sword lifted high. The banners of Christ flutter above both sides. The clash is thunder and confusion, a choir of madness. He strikes down a man whose shield bears the image of the Virgin Mary. The man falls without cursing, only whispering a prayer. Amaury freezes. In that moment, he realizes he has killed someone who believed exactly as he did. When Zara falls after 5 days, smoke blots the horizon. Its churches burn with the same fire once meant for Jerusalem. Amaury walks through the ruins, ash clinging to his armor. A dead child lies beside a broken chalice. Nearby, a Venetian soldier drags a golden altar plate into a cart. That night, the papal envoy arrives. Furious, trembling, pale, he reads aloud a decree from Pope Innocent III for this crime, the shedding of Christian blood. I hereby excommunicate all who took part. The words echo across the camp like cannon fire. The cross itself seems to dim in the torchlight. Men fall to their knees. Others laugh bitterly. Dandolo remains unmoved, staring at the horizon as if he sees Jerusalem through the smoke of Zara. Amaury clutches the red cross on his surcoat, feeling it burn against his chest. The priest beside him whispers, "You cannot serve God from outside His grace." Amaury replies, hollowly, "Then perhaps His grace is somewhere else." Days later, as panic spreads, the Crusades' leaders gather to repair what cannot be repaired. They call upon scholars and priests to justify the bloodshed. Soon, a convenient theology emerges. The Pope's anger is righteous. They say, but his knowledge is incomplete. Venice acted for the greater good, to preserve the Crusades' mission. In sermons, men twist Scripture into a shield. They preach that obedience to the mission outweighs obedience to mercy. The sin becomes sanctified by purpose. Amaury listens, numb, as the bishop declares, though excommunicated in name, we remain blessed in spirit. God understands our necessity. The men cheer. Amaury cannot. For him, the word necessity sounds like the devil's confession. The army stays in Zara for winter. The churches are looted, the citizens enslaved. The banners of Venice fly from the steeples. The Crusaders drink from chalices stolen from altars. Amaury spends his nights in the ruins of a monastery, his sword laid beside him like a dead friend. He dreams of Jerusalem, but every dream ends in fire. He begins to question the sermons that once moved his soul. He wonders how God's will can require sin to succeed. He wonders whether faith can survive its own corruption. In his journal, he writes, If God remains silent when his servants kill his servants, then perhaps he listens no longer to the prayers of soldiers. By spring, Zara is rebuilt, not for its people, but for Venice. The Doge visits the camp. Carried in a gilded chair, he blesses the army with mock piety. "You have proven your loyalty," he says. "God rewards obedience, and so do I." Amaury watches him raise the host. The same symbol of Christ he saw crushed in the streets. He cannot kneel. When others bow, he remains standing, the light of the pyres reflecting in his eyes. He does not yet speak his doubt aloud, but it grows like rot beneath the armor. As the fleet prepares to sail again, Amaury overhears whispers of a new alliance. A Byzantine prince, Alexios Fourvangelos, promises to pay Venice's debts if the Crusade helps him reclaim the throne of Constantinople. Another detour, another bargain. The road to Jerusalem bends again, this time toward the greatest Christian city on earth. Amaury looks at the horizon and realizes he no longer knows which way leads to God. "We have become pilgrims of power," he writes, "and every step we take leaves a stain upon the cross." The Venetian docks, preparing for departure from Zara. Early 1203 AD, the frantic sounds of shipbuilding. The creaking of massive wooden hulls, the low murmur of soldiers debating their spiritual damnation. The ships of the Fourth Crusade slice through green water, their sails swollen like lungs. The banners of the cross flutter beside the golden lion of Venice. Both symbols of salvation, both already stained. Amaury stands at the bow, wind whipping his surcoat. Below deck, horses groan and men pray, but the prayers no longer sound like hope. They sound like bargaining. He once dreamed of reaching Jerusalem. Now the fleet sails east, toward Constantinople, the greatest Christian city in the world. To save a prince, to repay a debt, to fulfill a promise that has nothing to do with God. In the Doge's cabin, Amaury hears the voice of Prince Alexios the Fourvangelos, a young man with trembling hands and the scent of desperation. "Help me reclaim my father's throne," he pleads, "and I will give Venice her silver, the Crusade her ships, and the Pope his triumph. I will unite Rome and the East. One church, one faith." It sounds like prophecy. It smells like politics. Amaury studies him. Silk robes, jeweled cross, a mouth that speaks of piety, but trembles when the Doge's men speak of coin. The old Venetian smiles behind his blindness. We accept, in that moment, the course of the Crusade changes forever. No longer toward the Holy Sepulchre, but toward the city of emperors. The promise of unity masks the hunger of empires. June 1203, Constantinople. Amaury sees it for the first time, rising from the sea like a vision, walls white as bone, domes of gold, spires glittering in the sunlight. The Hagia Sophia towers above the skyline, the largest church on earth. Every stone breathes sanctity. Men gasp, cross themselves, weep. Even the Venetians grow silent. "Surely," Amaury whispers, "God lives here," but the Doge, sitting in the prow of his galley, says nothing. He cannot see the city, yet he already owns it in his mind. When the fleet anchors, messengers are sent ashore. They demand that the Byzantine emperor, Alexios III, surrender and restore his nephew to the throne. The emperor refuses, so the Crusaders do what they have learned best. They prepare to siege another city of Christ. Amaury feels the weight of the absurdity. Priests blessing siege engines, banners of the cross raised against walls crowned with other crosses. He hears hymns in Latin answered by hymns in Greek. He wonders if heaven can tell the difference. When the bombardment begins, the golden mosaics of Constantinople shimmer in the firelight. Stones crash through monasteries. Bells toll above the screams. Amaury's sword feels heavier than it ever has before. Not from blood, but from shame. The first assault fails. The second breaks through. Flames leap from the Venetian quarter and spread through the city. The night sky glows red. A mockery of Pentecost. Amaury rides through streets slick with ash. Churches burn, icons shatter. In the chaos, he sees a priest clutching the Gospels as soldiers drag him away. He wants to help, but his own men are shouting, looting, laughing. Take what you can. In the name of Christ. Amaury can't tell if it's irony or insanity. By dawn, the old emperor flees. The young Alexios IV is crowned amid smoke and rubble. The crusade cheers as though Jerusalem itself had fallen. Amaury kneels before the new emperor and feels nothing. The crown gleams with blood. The cross above the altar flickers in the heat. He whispers, "If this is victory, what would defeat look like?" Alexios IV tries to keep his promise. He melts holy relics to pay the Venetian, taxes churches to fund soldiers. The people riot. The streets fill again with fire. This time lit by the very citizens the Crusaders claim to liberate. Amaury sees monks hurling stones at Latin soldiers, priests cursing the Western heretics. He realizes the union of Christendom has failed before it even began. When the emperor cannot pay the final debt, Venice demands action. The Doge orders the army to take what is owed. Not in silver, but in conquest. Amaury feels the last thread of his faith snap. The crusade that began as a pilgrimage has become an invasion. April 1204, the sack of Constantinople. It begins at dawn. Battering rams smash the gates of the Blaschernae quarter. The Venetians pour through the breaches, torches raised. The city that had stood for 1,000 years as the heart of Eastern Christendom is consumed in 3 days. Amaury rides through the chaos, unable to tell friend from foe. Latin knights tear jewels from icons, drag nuns from altars. Monks are slain in front of burning manuscripts. The Hagia Sophia becomes a stable for horses. He sees one of his comrades drink from a chalice, laughing. "God wills it," the man shouts. Amaury strikes him to the ground. "Does he roars. The man's smile fades. The laughter dies around them, but the plunder continues. No one stops it. By the 3rd day, the gold of Constantinople lies in Venetian ships, bound for Europe. Its relics, the very bones of saints, are sold like trinkets. When the fires finally die, Amaury stands in the ruins of a monastery. The floor is black with soot. The icons are shattered. He removes his helmet and looks at his reflection in a fragment of gilded glass. His face is streaked with ash and disbelief. He whispers, "We have conquered Christ himself." In the silence that follows, something inside him breaks. Quietly, completely, the faith that had guided him from France, that gave meaning to the cross on his chest, has become hollow metal. He removes the surcoat, the red cross still faint beneath the grime. For the first time, he feels lighter and utterly lost. If this was God's will, he writes in his journal, then perhaps God no longer wills anything at all. The Theodosian walls, Constantinople, July 1203, April 1204 AD. The terrifying cacophony of a massive medieval assault. The screaming of Christian citizens. The breaking of glass and stone. The smoke has cleared, but the stench remains, of ash, sweat, and something less visible. Guilt. The Crusaders call it victory. Amaury calls it silence. For weeks, He wanders the burned streets, past statues defaced, altars stripped, and palaces echoing with emptiness. Every step feels like walking on bone. The people, those who survived, hide in ruins. They do not shout or curse. They only stare at the soldiers with eyes that say what their lips will not. You are supposed to be our brothers. The banners of Christ hang from the walls of the Hagia Sophia. They flutter in the heat like shrouds. In the square below, Venetian merchants weigh relics on scales, calculating salvation in ounces. Amaury watches a piece of gold, once a saint's halo, slide into a coffer marked with the Doge's seal. He cannot look away. In the throne room of the great palace, Doge Enrico Dandolo sits like a spider at the center of his web, blind eyes. But he sees everything that matters. Amaury is summoned among the other knights. They kneel as the Doge speaks. God rewards the faithful, Dandolo says, and we have been faithful. Not only to him, but to his purposes. Amaury's voice cuts through the hall. His purposes, or yours. The room freezes. The old man tilts his head, smiling faintly. My son, he says, God does not speak in words. He speaks in results. The others laugh nervously. Amaury does not. He realizes that this man, nearly a century old, nearly blind, has seen the crusade more clearly than any of them. He knew, from the start, that Jerusalem was never the destination. The cross was merely a flag, and he, its true general. Later, outside the palace, Amaury writes, Dandolo saw with no eyes. He led us not by faith, but by debt. He is not a servant of God. He is the accountant of empires. The new Latin Empire of Constantinople is proclaimed. A French noble, Baldwin of Flanders, is crowned emperor in the Hagia Sophia. He kneels where priests once prayed, and the crowd chants his name in two languages neither side understands. Amaury stands in the back, armor unpolished, hands trembling. The bishop anoints Baldwin with oil taken from the shattered altar. The incense smells of burned wood. Christ has given us this city, the bishop declares. Through fire, he has made us one church. Amaury closes his eyes. He hears the distant cries of orphans beyond the gates, the hammering of Venetian coiners stamping gold with their sigil. This, he realizes, is the sound of unity. Forged in betrayal, when the ceremony ends, he removes his sword belt and leaves it on the floor. No one notices. Days later, Amaury confronts one of his old superiors, a baron who once rode beside him from France. They meet in the shadow of a burned monastery. Amaury, tell me, my lord, did you know, from the beginning, Baron, know what, Amaury, that we would never see Jerusalem? The man sighs. Amaury, you're still young. You think faith and politics are separate. They never were. God needs soldiers. Soldiers need silver. Silver needs Venice. Amaury's voice breaks. We were promised salvation. You were given purpose. The Baron replies, do not confuse the two. He rides away, leaving Amaury alone in the dust. The echo of hooves fades like a dying prayer. At the harbor, Amaury watches Venetian galleys loaded with spoils, chalices, icons, bones of saints wrapped in silk. He sees a priest haggling with a merchant over the skull of John Chrysostom. The merchant swears it's genuine. The priest demands a discount. Coins clink like mockery. Amaury wants to shout, but no one would hear. Everyone is buying a piece of holiness. Everyone is trying to balance the weight of sin with silver. That night, he writes, the lie was not in what we did, but in what we believed we were doing. We thought we were servants of heaven. We were contractors of hell. The following morning, Amaury walks to the sea-wall, carrying his surcoat folded over one arm. The red cross, once bright, is dull with soot. He looks at it for a long time. The fabric still smells of smoke, of death, of lies. Then, slowly, he tears the cross from the cloth. The threads unravel like veins. He drops it into the water. The current takes it away, spinning, shrinking, gone. No trumpets, no thunder, just the quiet sound of waves erasing a vow. If God lives, he whispers, he is not in banners or king. He is not in Venice, nor Rome, nor this city we have destroyed. He is in the silence that follows. Amaury turns away from the sea. Behind him, the city burns anew. This time, not with fire, but with greed. That night, Amaury dreams of Jerusalem, but the city is empty. No walls, no domes, no light, only a road stretching endlessly east, lit by stars that do not guide. He wakes before dawn, gathers what remains of his armor, and begins to walk. No banner, no commander, no absolution, only a man. And the long road ahead, leading away from empire and towards something that might still resemble faith. Spring 1205. The road east of Nicomedia. The morning mist drifts low across the plain. Amaury walks alone. His armor is gone. Traded for food, the red cross that once marked his chest is a faint scar of dye. His sword, once kissed by priests and dipped in holy water, now hangs rusted at his side. An echo of what he once believed. The road to Jerusalem is long, and for the first time, he travels it not as a soldier, but as a penitent. Every step is a confession, every silence, a prayer. The lands of Anatolia stretch before him. Villages burned by both Christian and Muslim hands. Fields sown with bones instead of grain. He meets no armies now, only widows, shepherds, and the quiet ghosts of a war that pretended to be holy. When he stops at night, he writes, "The cross I carried became a sword. The sword I carried became a sin, and the sin still walks beside me." He dreams of fire, of the screams in Constantinople, of the Doge's blind eyes gleaming through smoke. But sometimes, between dreams, he hears other sounds. The laughter of children, the whisper of wind over olive trees, and wonders if grace hides in the small things he once ignored. One evening, as the sun bleeds into the hills, Amaury reaches a small village. He collapses outside a clay house. A man and his son find him. Not crusaders, not knights, but Muslims. They lift him without hesitation. The man says nothing of faith or blood. He simply gives Amaury water. Later, by the fire, the man asks quietly, "Were you one of them?" Amaury cannot answer. His silence says enough. The man nods. "I lost a brother at Zara, another at Constantinople. But you look like a man who lost something greater." Amaury stares at the flames. "I lost God." The man smiles faintly. "Then perhaps you will find him on the road." He walks faster than armies. For the first time in months, Amaury sleeps without dreaming of fire. Days turn into weeks. Amaury moves south, through Cilicia, where the mountains meet the sea. He eats from the charity of monks and peasants, Latin and Greek, Muslim and Jew alike. None of them ask which God he serves. They only ask if he is hungry. In every gesture, he sees the faith that the Crusade had promised, but never delivered. Compassion without banners, devotion without blood. He begins to understand that the church is not walls or crowns or swords, but hands that help without asking for reward. Near Antioch, Amaury finds the bones of an abandoned chapel. Ivy crawls through its windows. The altar is cracked, but sunlight falls through the roof. Painting the floor in gold, he kneels there, unarmed, unblessed, unafraid. He speaks to the silence. Forgive me for believing that violence was devotion. Forgive me for mistaking conquest for faith. There is no voice in reply, no vision, no miracle, only the quiet rustle of wind through the broken stone. And yet, somehow, he knows he has been heard. He stays until sunset, then rises and continues east. Months later, he reaches Jerusalem, the goal that had once been the world's obsession. He expects trumpets, angels, glory. Instead, he finds a quiet city under fragile peace. The streets are worn smooth by centuries of pilgrim, but there are no knights, no banners, no armies of God. He enters through the Jaffa Gate at dusk. The air smells of myrrh and dust. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre looms ahead. Dark, immense, indifferent. Inside, candles flicker around the tomb. Greek priests chant. Latin pilgrims kneel. Muslims pass silently outside the courtyard, selling bread. It is not heaven. It is humanity. Flawed, divided, breathing. Amaury kneels. His knees ache against the stone. He does not pray for forgiveness. He prays for understanding. He remembers the priest in Montfort who sewed the red cross onto his surcoat, the needle trembling with each stitch. He remembers the vow to serve God, to free his city, to die redeemed. But now he understands. The vow was never about conquest. It was about surrender, of pride, of certainty, of the illusion of righteousness. He whispers, the true Jerusalem was never a city. It was the heart unarmed. Tears fall onto the stone. They vanish instantly. The holy ground does not need more blood. When he rises, dawn has touched the horizon. Pilgrims shuffle past him, poor, rich, young, old, each carrying their own cross of longing. None of them know his name. He prefers it that way. Amaury steps outside the church. The streets glow gold with sunlight. A boy offers him water. He smiles and accepts. He looks east, toward the desert, and feels no fear. In his final journal entry, he writes, the crusade took my faith and burned it. The road gave it back, quietly, in pieces, and in each piece, I found God again. Not in victory, but in mercy. He closes the book, leaves it on the steps of the Holy Sepulchre, and walks away. No banners follow. No songs proclaim his name, only the wind, and the faint sound of church bells far, far behind him. History remembers wars as battles of swords and kings, but the greatest wars are fought inside the soul. Amaury de Montfort never returned to France. His name was lost among the dead of a crusade that forgot its own purpose. Yet his journey remains, a quiet proof that faith, once built on lies, can still rise from truth.